Welcome to the first episode of Vows and Visuals. Here today with me, I got Will, my co-host. I'm Landon. So Will, tell me a little bit about like how you got into like wedding filmmaking and all that stuff.
Definitely. So when I was like a freshman in high school, I kind of picked up a camera. I was like a Nikon D3200, like just super basic. Um, and I was racing motocross at the time and had a bunch of friends with like cars and stuff. So took the camera and just kind of played with it, hopped on YouTube, kind of taught myself over time. Spent my, 4 years of high school just really, kind of learning the fundamentals by myself, just trial and error. Um, and then I joined the Navy in 2016, and got stationed in Texas. And while I was there, I really got into like filming like trucks and cars and all that kind of cool stuff. But then once I got out of the Navy, I moved back to Montana and was like, man, there's really not like.
What like brought you to Montana?
I was born and raised here, fifth generation Montanan, and just I've always had this connection here. So decided that it was home and I needed to come back.
That's fair. I mean, it's
So
beautiful here. I
yeah,
can't.
yeah, no, 100%. So, moving back here, I just noticed there wasn't like the scene that there is in Texas for vehicles, and that was definitely like my craft. So I moved back here and kind of put my camera away for a couple, like almost a year, and sold it. Like didn't have anything, and was like, you know what, like it's just not for me. And one of my friends was like, hey, you want to film a wedding? And I was like, it's actually my ex-girlfriend too. So it's like really awkward.
Nice.
I was like, money's money. So I was working dead end jobs, just doing my thing. And, I just kind of was like, let's just do it. So did it. I think it was like $800 or something.
That's where we're all about to start.
Yeah. Didn't know what I was doing. Didn't like record audio. Didn't do any of that, but it ended up being like a really cool video. And I just, started to get bookings off of that. And, went from there. But I never like went to film school, never did anything like that. It was all just like YouTube, like watching like Christian Mate Grab videos and like really finding like my style, because like deep down when I first started, I wanted to get into like like the travel adventure, like going up the mountains,
The Peter McKinnon, like we always do.
yeah, just like the vibe. And so from there, it just kind of took off, and I just decided, I'm going to be a wedding filmmaker. And
Was there anything like about weddings besides the fact of just like making money right away that made you want to like do that? Or
not really, honestly, because I had only been to like 2 weddings in my life. Like, I was not really that like, interested in weddings, but went to my first one. It was just such a positive experience, like people on like one of the biggest days of their life, and like you're capturing it, which it's also like really pressuring because like, they're paying you to capture their day. Like you don't want to mess it up. Um, but like looking back on the first day, like, I was so nervous. Like I didn't know what I was doing. I knew how to somewhat operate a camera, and it was just kind of a mess, but also like a really good time. And you know, looking back at the footage once I got home, I was like, man, this is awesome. Like this is such a cool way for like the couple to like re-encompass or whatever the word is, like relive their day.
yeah.
And so I think that's the most rewarding part about filming weddings, is definitely how rewarding it is, because my entire life of working, like being active duty, having all that, there was no like reassurance in my like work. I never really like saw the end product of what I was doing to like the client. And with this, like you send a video and you're like, here's your film. And then they, 20 minutes later after they watch it, they're like, holy smokes, man, like that was insane.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's why I like video way more even too, just because
Yeah.
like you can draw those like emotions from photos and stuff, but I feel like it's just so much more difficult and
Yeah.
stuff. And like with the video, you get all that like movement and
Yep.
the audio. And I mean, by the end of it, the goal is like basically having people crying.
For sure. And it just like really shows their day in a completely different aspect. Which is what I like about it, because a photo you can hang on the wall and it's cool. A wedding photographer is definitely needed. It's always been customary, but video, like 2016 era is when kind of wedding
Right.
video started. And, it's just like starting to be on the come up, because people are like noticing that, like wedding films are so cool, especially when you get into like the level that like we're getting to, with really learning to tell the story, but also having the visuals to help you tell the story. Because when I first started, like in trucks way back in the day, there's no story. I mean, you're still trying to like build some emotion with like the audio and the
A little
music and
speed ramp here and there, yeah.
and like keep people interested. But with wedding films, it's just like any story. Like you have your rising action, you have, like the climax and that comes back down. So people are, crying and then they're happy and then they're crying again. And then they end with like this feel good vibe. And I think that's obviously like the coolest thing ever. And, it's just like really helped me like fulfill my, desire to be a videographer. I've always had these like temptations of being like, what, screw it, I'm just gonna do it full time. And finally I'm at the point in my life, like 8 to 10 years later, that it's like,
Just
I can
insane,
finally do it,
yeah.
and it's a big jump, going full time and praying that you're getting the bookings, praying that everything's working out. It's a lot of stress, but like it's the best decision I've ever made. So
That's awesome.
enough about me. Let's hear about you.
Yeah, no, so no, it's awesome though. It's exactly how like my wedding films in a sense are too, is like you want to draw all that emotion out that you like just absolutely can. But my start was actually just like totally random. Graduated high school in 2019, decided like I have no freaking clue what I'm doing with my life at all. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go work some dead end jobs of UPS and some other like crap like that.
For
And
sure.
and I ended up going to a community college at the time in Bend, Oregon, and I it was right before COVID happened. I rented a camera from the like library, and then COVID hit, and I just got stuck with this camera. I didn't touch the camera for the week that I had it like rented or whatever, and it just sat there. I just sat on the table, and I just looked at it every single day when I left, and I was like, I need to do something with that. I need to do something with that. Like I've always been interested, like my whole life in photography, videography, all that kind of stuff. Like I remember my mom, she was pissed. She hated me. I used to take her old little like Sony like point and shoot camera, set it up on a little tripod, and then grab my like mountain bike, just drift rocks into it and just destroy the lens on that thing. And she was livid, but and I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. I don't even think I even got to touching editing it or anything like that. But I got stuck with this camera during COVID, and it, like I said, it sat there, and I'm like, I got to do something with it. So I did like a few pictures of my car. I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. Like, turn the wheel, make it look all profiled, look all sick in the middle of a road, like blocking traffic and stuff. But when COVID hit, and then my dad has this really, really cool old like C10 truck.
Nice.
And I looked up every single setting. I mean, it was like a Canon Rebel with like a kit lens, had no clue how to use this thing. And ended up just taking this long exposure picture with like steel wool and stuff like that. And I just fell in love after that picture. It's one of my favorite pictures to this day still, completely unlike wedding related, anything like that. But it was just such a cool like moment basically. And my dad's like, well, go to school for it. Cause he was always like pounding on me, like, you got to go to school. You got to go to school. You got to go to school for something. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I mean, like out of high school, I wanted to go play football. And absolutely hated every second of that. I think I left after like 3 days. Like it was just hell. It was a community college and stuff. But after I took that picture, it just was so rewarding to see something that you like set up so much time for and to get this image. And you're like, literally just like, holy shit, like this is insane. I can't believe that this is like what I'm going to be able to do. So I ended up doing one Google search. It was, I can go down to California. I think it was like San Diego, or it was Missoula, Montana. And I was like, okay. So I did one Google search, didn't think anything of it, but then their marketing team is just amazing. So I got Instagram ads daily. And they're like, sign up for this. And I was like, okay, fine. So I signed up for it, working at a golf course at the time. And I took a break. I was like, guys, I got to go for a minute. Like I was just running carts back and forth, but went into my car, had shorts on that day, and just made this list of everything. Cause I got on a call with them, and I didn't have a piece of paper cause I couldn't find one like I normally do, but ended up writing on my leg, and I had this full list of just like written down notes of like every little thing, like how much school costs, all that stuff. So I ended up going to the Rocky Mountain School of Photography in Missoula. Didn't want to be in California. It just,
I don't blame you.
yeah, right.
Side note. So you like wrote on your shorts?
Like it was more my leg, but yeah, no,
Oh.
literally had like my lowrider shorts on and just decided to just write as much as I can down. I have a picture of it somewhere. I'll have to pop it up, but literally was just writing down every little thing that I could. Like, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I gotta do something about this. So, and my dad's like, yeah, if you want to do it, just do it. Help me co-sign for everything, get the loans for all of it. It was $38,000, best money I've ever spent in my entire life. And went to the school for the 8 months, and they taught just everything. Cause I actually didn't even want to do videography. I didn't even know anything about it at the time. And this is probably now, we're probably 2020. So heat of COVID, all that stuff. And go to the school for 8 months, and then realized I was like, I love photos. Still didn't really know what I was doing. Had a cheap Nikon I don't even remember what it was. Just
Potato.
it was a potato. It was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. Like kids are showing up to this like school with like the R5 and all that stuff. And I was just looking at my gear and I was like, shit, what am I going to do? Like, so end up going to the school. And then as we're going through it, like, I was like, well, I like portraits. I like people, stuff like that. So that's when they're like, oh, maybe you should do like portraiture and stuff like that. And I was just looking around and I was like, well, I kind of like weddings. It sounds fun. Like in a joke, I was like, this is the best job ever. Like you get a drink, you get a party, everybody's happy to be there. Sounds like the best job in the world. And that's kind of what like enticed me into weddings and stuff like that. And then from there, I ended up getting a birthday gift of like the Canon EOS R and graduated school at the time. And I was like, okay, I need to get a Canon camera just because that's what every photographer shoots on. And I was like, this will be my opportunity basically to jump into weddings and hopefully second shoot. Because as much as I loved Sony, which I'm a Sony shooter now, at least for video, Canon was just that perfect step to be able to get into that like photo side of things. And then I ended up meeting Amber up in Whitefish, Montana, which is kind of up near Glacier. And it was insane. So it was probably the second or third wedding ever done. Actually, I want to say it was the second. So it was the second wedding I ever did. Met Amber up there in Whitefish. And then I was moving to Billings at the time. And she's like, well, I'm living Billings and we should meet up after. And I was like, awesome. She loved the photos I did. First off, I don't know where I pulled that just like out of my ass. Like it was like before these two weddings, like my photos were super mid. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do about this. Like, I don't even know if I can do it. I'm still like learning on camera flash, even though I'm graduated from school at this point. And then I met up with Amber when we got to Billings and the rest was kind of just history. She helped me so much just getting into bookings, all that stuff. And I mean, like my ideal client while I was going through school was definitely like, I had that ideal client like in mind. And I was like, okay, I want to do weddings. I was like, it's just so much fun. And it looked so much fun. And I was like, I see people doing it, but right out of school too. I'm like, okay, how do people make a full-time living off this and all that stuff? But then we get back to Billings and we just, like I said, the rest was kind of history. We became friends and I second shot with her for a good, probably year, somewhere in there. And we were just such good friends after that. And our personalities clicked so much. And then when she was booked, she would refer weddings to me. And it just led me down that like whole path of like, oh, this is awesome. Yeah. And then that's when I realized that Montana has no videographers. Not saying come here, but, there's maybe 10, maybe of like, at least with super good work, that is up to like quality wise, at least.
Yeah. It's kind of funny. Like, Montana's so oversaturated with, wedding photographers. Like we've done 70 to 80 weddings. I don't remember the exact number. But we haven't worked with the same photographer once.
No, it's so oversaturated here. I mean, I feel like every state is about that though with photographers because everybody decides just to kind of pick up a camera and decide to like be like, I want to be a photographer. And I mean, that's literally almost kind of how you started with videography, but everybody just does it with photography because it's a lot easier in a sense. For sure. And there's a lot less learning to it, I feel.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's a really good bonus to get into videography. But like what I was going to say was that, there's all these photographers, but there's like 10 videographers in that like mid-range level of like where people can actually, afford, but also get really good content.
Absolutely. I mean, in even the luxury market, there's even less, maybe
two or three.
I was going to say maybe. Yeah.
So yeah, I just think it's funny. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're all good. You're all good. But yeah, no, talking about a little bit more like how I got started too is like with like Amber. And and that's exactly how I got into it was just realizing that there was no videographers. Cause when I started for photography, she's like, yeah, I've never worked with the same videographer. And if I do, like they're standing in front of me, they're like, I've got a great horror story I'll get to in a minute, but,
we've all got that.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. But no, it's just like that. And so that's what I was like, okay, there's this gap and I wanted to continue to work with Amber basically. So I was like, I should do video. Cause then I realized, oh, her clients are also going to want video. And she's a great, like, she knows everybody everywhere. Every time I've traveled with her, if it's to San Francisco, to like Portland, Oregon, to Cancun, Mexico, we're in an airport. She knows somebody. It's crazy. She knows literally everybody. And just absolutely ridiculous. So I was like, well, why would I not do something that I can still work with her and have that like fun basically? Cause we have so much fun at weddings and they run so smoothly.
For sure.
So that's where I got into the video side of things. And she's like, wow, the first video I did absolute garbage, but she's like, wow, I love this. It's so cool. And I was like, yeah, it's okay, I guess.
Which you like probably thought it was garbage, but like in all reality, like I've like to this day I still critique my videos and I'm like, holy smokes, like I could do so much better than that. But then like you showed me your first wedding film and I was like, that's actually like decent, dude. Like
and I think we all do that. Like
yes,
on both sides, because I
that's the
mean,
biggest problem with like filmmaking and photos. Like you constantly are like, man, I could do so much better.
oh, absolutely. Especially because the client's going to look at it and be like, this is the coolest thing ever, because they've never had professional, probably photos, video, anything
Yeah.
like that. And then they see it and they're like, wow, we look freaking amazing throughout the day.
Oh, for sure.
And it's hilarious. I mean, and that's one thing we need to continue to do as videographers as long as we do this till we die, basically,
Yeah.
is critiquing. Because if you just get stuck, and I see that with a lot of photographers,
Yep.
is they continue to do the same weddings at the same venues, because there's not that many venues here in Montana,
Oh, for
at
sure.
least. And they continue to go down that like same path of just like doing the same thing over and over with just different people, basically. And then it just gets so stale, and then they burn out.
Yeah.
Their quality goes down because it just doesn't keep like growing. And that's what I've noticed from videographers, photographers, all that stuff, is that like the ones who actually succeed or continue to like change their style as stuff goes on, upgrade their gear, all that kind of stuff. So
Always like stepping out of your comfort zone is what I've learned helps you succeed.
what would you say your biggest thing you've stepped out of your comfort zone is then?
Definitely going full time.
Okay.
Because I was working, a regular job and trying to be a filmmaker at the same point, and my focus was not 100% on filming. And I think now that it's like finally getting to that point of me like just being so dedicated to it that I'm like really starting to like, level up. And I think, like I said earlier, stepping out of your comfort zone is crazy. But, I was going to circle back on like, how different in a sense that like our backgrounds are. I was like pretty much self-taught. I never really did any of that. I was like peaking with filmmaking at like 2016 area, where like my year 2016
Throw a
was
little
like
Instagram filter over the top
got
of
all those
it.
crazy transitions and all that, and like now I was in the Navy, so I have like the GI Bill and all that. So I was like, in the off season, I'm just gonna go to college and like, what's the degree I want to go for? Film, because eventually, like, I want to be like a DP, cinematographer, whatever. And that's a good way to get into it. But stepping into the wedding industry is like one of the best things that you can do if you want to be like a DP or like cinematographer, or like anything like that, because weddings teach you so much about business, but also teach you so much about working under pressure. And
absolutely. I mean, like I do a little bit of commercial work here on the side sometimes, and you have so much more time. You can be like, oh, this is a 3-day shoot. You can reshoot that every time. But with wedding filmmaking, you're like, if you miss it, you're kind of SOL. And
you have one chance. And in further episodes, we'll definitely go into detail on like how to protect yourself in a situation like that. But just overall, like weddings are the best thing to get into. Even if you're an entry level, like you just picked up a camera, like go second shoot for somebody.
Go second shoot. Go film your friends.
Yeah.
Do little things. I mean, look at like just a totally different aspect, like Peter McKinnon. Like he literally started filming just random crap throughout like the day and fun stuff like that. And now he is just filthy rich and crazy with filmmaking now, and does awesome stuff for like Coca-Cola, all that stuff. So absolutely, I totally agree.
Blows my mind.
It's absolutely insane. But yeah, it's crazy too, because like I went down the path of just going absolute, like I was like, okay, I can always learn kind of like you did, like YouTube, figure out a camera and stuff. So I decided to go to the school. It's called the Rocky Mountain School of Photography, if any of you guys are wondering. But I went through their professional intensive program, which is 8 months long. And I was like, I just want to learn the business side of things.
Yeah.
And it was just an easy way in 8 months to fast track from going from literally not even
from nothing to something,
shooting on auto mode, to shooting a manual and be able to run a full business, understanding who my like ideal client is, all that stuff, building a website. Like it's crazy how much like knowledge that I have that I'll probably never use in my entire life.
It's always good to have that, because in a business you can never like, look into the future. And I've had stuff that's like so unexpected happen. Not necessarily bad things, but stuff that like if I didn't have previous like experience under pressure or, with business, that kind of thing, like I would struggle so hard. So, and then like you said, with Amber, like having a mentor in the industry is so key. If you can find somebody that you can second shoot for, like I just went straight into it, lead shooting, budget weddings, and it worked. It worked. But the proper way to get into it, I would say, would be like Landon, like finding somebody that, has already a footprint in the industry that can, kind of shape you into who you want to be, because ultimately everybody's different. But
And I mean, everybody has different clients too. Agreed.
yeah,
Absolutely.
and you want to be your own person, but having a mentor that you can kind of help your, not necessarily steal ideas, but like implement their business practices into yours, but also use like your personal.
I mean, like they say, just like steal like an artist.
Yeah.
Basically. So it's, no, I absolutely agree with you. And it's crazy because I mean, like, it's like having a mentor, like that was one of the coolest things. Like Amber never ended up actually like taking the money from the school, but they gave us like, I think it was like $300 to $500, something like that, to go get a mentor at a school. Cause they realized that too, that you need somebody who just keeps like pushing you down that path and being able to do that. But even if like, say you don't have a budget for a mentor, like a lot of people will do it for free.
Yeah.
Or even like just surrounding yourself with creatives in a way.
Oh,
like,
for sure. I love, like having people that have the same like, interests as me.
Absolutely.
I'm always trying to find people that are like interested in filmmaking. And, at film school, like, there's a couple kids that I'm like, hey, come second shoot a wedding. Like, I'm very confident that like I can do the wedding myself, but it's just more of like, I'll pay you to come out here because we need more people. And
then it helps them too.
it helps
just,
them.
absolutely.
It just builds. I've made like the best friends, with this industry. So
Absolutely. I mean, that's exactly kind of how we met, like just being competition and then being like, hey, let's just kind of hang out, see what you do.
Once you understand that like there is no competition and you need to be friends with everybody, I think that's when you start to really level up your business. So
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree.
yep. So Landon, what would you recommend for like beginning photo videographers to do to like get into the industry, to find mentorships, like equipment?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, so the way I started kind of was, like I said, literally graduate school, was working at a dealership, but like the biggest thing to me starting was like doing jobs that included photo in some way. Like I was taking pictures of cars at a dealership, just for their website, no editing, basically, maybe just like a little contrast here and there. But no, the biggest thing was just getting into Facebook groups in your area. And that's actually exactly how I found Amber, was doing it like that. And so like getting into Facebook groups, reaching out. I know there's great websites that have great like ways to find mentorships and stuff, but really just like surrounding yourself slowly with a community in some way, if that's through your college, if that's through like Facebook groups like I did. Because people always need other people. If you're just like running gaff, if you're helping out at a wedding, like a lot of people I know will literally start out by just assisting so that they're around a day of a wedding to kind of understand what that looks like.
For sure. And like, as having an established business, I 100% would love it if like these aspiring filmmakers, I'm more on just the video side. My girlfriend Carson, she does, photo, that kind of thing. But like, I love taking people under my wing. So like, don't be afraid to reach out to like, local videographers, photographers, and be like, hey, I'm interested in getting into the industry. Like, if you ever have an opportunity to, have me come second shoot, like I'll do it for free. I'll do this, because the knowledge that you will learn from doing that is,
oh no, absolutely.
it's
and that's
like,
yeah. And that's exactly how like I did it with Amber, is just literally just like watching. Like I learned so much like technical side of things, and they taught you a little bit about stuff and like understanding people. But when you're immersed with a day and like with somebody who is in the industry of whatever you want to be with like weddings and stuff, is just watching them, how they run a day, and realizing like how you can make that your own, basically.
For sure.
So that was always like super helpful. And a lot of like the prompts that I use, a lot of the like posing, a lot of like just like interacting with people is how I run a wedding day. And because I've worked with other photographers, videographers that are just, their days are so stressful. Not going to call anybody out here, but like it is so hectic and stuff. And when I worked with Amber, everything was just so smooth and like fun. And it doesn't feel like work anymore, which is super cool.
It's funny because like, I feel like being a videographer has an advantage in a sense, because you get to work with photographers and learn like how they run a day, and also figure out like what you want to do differently than them. But also like a lot of the poses that we do, we've implemented like, posing ideas from other photographers, but I haven't like stolen them completely, because with video, you want a lot of like motion. You want like, so I'll like prompt people, hey, touch nose to nose, but like you'll start the video before they even touch nose to nose. And you'll get like the motion in there, but like just the posing is like an idea that I've found, from multiple photographers, that kind of thing. So, don't be afraid to reach out to like literally whoever.
Yeah.
I don't care if they're like charging $8,000 to film a wedding. Like if they're a decent person in the industry, they understand that like you need more people, and like there's people that have the same interests as you, like,
Right. Well, and I mean, that's what I love, which I've noticed, especially from some of my friends in other states and stuff who've tried to get into it and reach out, is in Montana, we're just such an awesome like community of photographers, videographers, all that kind of stuff. And if we don't respond, we're so busy. Like
Yeah.
every weekend, weekdays, doing just like random crap here and there for weddings and planning and stuff. And I mean, if we don't like respond, just reach out again. Continue to reach out. Like that
Yep.
consistency is what's going to be key
For sure.
to getting in. Because I mean, it for most photographers, videographers, it's going to sit in the back of our minds, and we probably just like blanked it.
Yep.
But if we need that help, like if you're continuing like every few months, every month, something like that, like, hey, just curious if you have anything, been looking at it. Like it's for the most part not going to be super annoying, especially if it's just like a quick DM, something like that.
For sure. And like having somebody come second shoot for us that has no experience is honestly amazing, because then you can kind of like teach them your ways.
Absolutely.
And it's
so helpful.
so easy to be like, it's so helpful to have somebody come, even if they're just like setting up light stands or, tripods, or just watching a camera to make sure it doesn't like overheat or something during the ceremony. Like having that extra set of eyes, because anybody can look at a camera and be like, oh no, the button's not red anymore, So
No,
it's so
absolutely.
helpful, so helpful.
No, I agree. And a few more things that I'll touch on about like getting started in the whole like wedding industry of stuff. Like, I mean, I've seen wedding videos that are amazing that have been shot on iPhones.
Oh, yeah.
Even like iPhones are just crazy these days. But
Gear doesn't matter.
no, not at all. I mean, it definitely helps.
Yep.
For sure. Like it's allowed my business to jump from like being like very mediocre to looking like a full scale production, basically. But I mean, literally getting just something cheap. Like I said, I started on the Canon EOS R, and I could only shoot 1080 at 60 frames.
Yep.
I don't even think I could shoot 8-bit with like, we'll get into all the details of like the technical stuff later for you guys. But
it's funny because like you could go out and buy like an FX3 or like an FX6, whatever, and be like, man, this is a killer camera. But if you don't know how to use it, like it's crazy. You could like my camera that I used for like 6 years was the A6300 and the A6400 Sony. And like I feel like I could hop back on that camera right now and like absolutely crush it and make it look amazing.
No, absolutely.
And so remember this, like gear is important, but it's not that important. Knowing your settings, knowing how to use it, and having the right glass
Agreed.
helps
And that's
substantially. You could have a toaster body and a G Master lens and you would be like balling.
No, absolutely. I totally agree with that. That's so one thing that I recommend for like all photographers, like we're going to teach a class later this year and bring a bunch of people out and stuff. But like the biggest thing is literally having the camera that you have if you already have one. And we'll go, like I said, we'll have a list for everybody here in our Patreon that we'll plug later. But of all the gear recommendations that we have, but like with your camera and whatever glass, starting with just an ND filter and just hitting record. That's the biggest thing. And then, like I said, if you're just starting out, one of the biggest things I feel like even outside of cameras, everything is just understanding people.
Yep.
Because nobody wants to have like sitting in front of all these cameras in front of us right now. It's super awkward. It took us
for
probably
sure.
20 minutes to even figure out how to do this, and sit in front of it instead of being behind it. But like just realizing like how to like help people out or like understanding people throughout the day.
For sure. And making sure that they know not to look at the lens, because it's so weird. When you watch a movie, if you notice, like they never look at the lens. They might look like super close to it, but never looking at it. And there's some shots that are, like becoming a little bit more trendy where like the bride does this like move forward thing and like, it's moody, and I've done it a couple times, and like in the right setting, it's okay. But, just like the candid, like cinematic, I just use that word, dang it. Like the cinematic movements and stuff, like it's just such a cool like thing to do. So
yeah, no, absolutely. And like I said, like literally my biggest recommendation is just using your camera and getting an ND filter, understanding that like your different frame rates, your different like what apertures you're going to want to be using, kind of like you do in photo, but literally just tossing an ND filter on there, figuring out like the filter size of your lens and just starting there and hitting record. And
for sure. And, don't be afraid to like go on like lensrentals.com or borrow lenses. And, like a typical wedding setup is, you have like your A cam, which is the camera that's like on a gimbal or whatever, the one that you're with all day. But then having like a B cam on a tripod that's just like constantly rolling, like, all these details, which is like kind of a backup, but also like a second angle that you can use to like tell the story and the emotion and that kind of thing. So that's definitely how I got into it. Was I rented so many cameras, so many lenses, like did all this stuff, and it never really made me better. But once I understood the cameras and like how they operated, that's where I got to the
Well,
point where,
absolutely. I mean, I literally ended up renting like the Canon R5C, thinking this is going to be the best thing ever. Didn't really know what I was doing. Shot in the standard picture profile. Didn't use log. Shot it in 1080p when that camera can shoot 8K. Like, didn't really know what I was doing, and the quality's not that great just based off the camera.
It's just like my FX3. You put it in 8-bit 1080, and you're like, "What the heck is
you're
this?"
Like, what is going on here? No, absolutely. But
so, guys, that was a really fun episode. You know, I think you know, you learned a lot about us. You know, and we want to be able to like teach you guys from our experiences, and you to be able to implement that into like your business, and also like following your dreams. You know, and I just think that's like the most important thing. Like a lot of people, you know, get so burnt out on this. You know, I've gotten burnt out with filmmaking like 2 or 3 times and completely stopped. And you know, it's at the point now where it's like, this is so fun. It's not work. You know, the editing sometimes can be work, but so, you know, stay tuned for like our following episodes, because we're really going to go into the depth of, you know, like what it takes to be a full-time wedding filmmaker. And we're not going to be like the gimmick people that are like, you know, come here, take my course. I'm going to make you 6 figures. You like, we're going to teach you like from our hearts, like the experiences that we've learned.
And just from the ground up, just literally going into depth of just like settings, how a day looks with us, how everything is, and like why you should have a videographer at a wedding, why it's important to actually like go into depth of like asking these questions to a videographer and stuff like that, into our clients, all that stuff.
And we'll definitely go into like some horror stories of like stuff that we've had happen to us that, you know, like there's always stuff in this industry that like you can't predict, but there's stuff that you can like definitely be aware of. That's a possibility. So
absolutely. And if you guys want that like super raw, uncensored of all of these like horror stories and all that stuff, we're gonna have a Patreon coming on later this month, something like that. So
sweet.
Awesome.
Heck
cool.
yeah.
Well, it was good talking with you, Will, again, and we'll see you another day.
Deuces.
See ya.